Just want to give you a brief overview of what each person, kind of the highlights of their presentation, and then we will get into questions. So be thinking about your questions. So Mamta talked a little bit about challenges gaining buy-in for automation decision and usage, talking about resistance, people having a fear of losing their jobs and low morale. Some of the strategies she talked about for gaining buy-in were to do lean training and just do it projects, allowing people to take a risk. That was really critical and important. The leaders needed to be enthusiastic. I like that one. Talking about respect, recognition, teamwork, and accountability, and employee rounding, kind of like patient rounding, but asking employees what's working well, not what's wrong. So we'll skip Morgan's part now. Stefan talked about how to manage compliance. In the past, they were using paper forms, and then they implemented mobile and technology. Some of the challenges were around regulatory changes, auditing and record-keeping, compliance costs, global reach, and culture change, and that complexity is continually and steadily increasing. So he talked about a great solution around Agile BPM, Agile being build, measure, learning, and repeating, building a minimum viable product, and then talked about automation BPM, having a consistent chain of custody, complete audit trail, notification escalation management, quick process change, and of course analytics. And then Solomon talked about some of the challenges being value chain management, equipment reliability, resource changes, security, managing costs, managing regulatory constraints. That regulatory theme keeps coming in here. And then talked about the importance of coordination, focus, teamwork, communication needing to be there 24/7, and complex solutions, changing conditions, and choice. He then talked about the solution of first identifying the right problem to solve, and then figuring out the solution, incorporating analytics and optimization. And then Jean talked about the alignment of Vanguard's core values of performance, risk, and cost. She showed us the long journey that Vanguard's had with starting with Six Sigma in 1990, and then talked a lot about how they're performing process excellence and how they were able to change it at least three major different times to have greater results. She talked about looking first at the pain points as their projects and being kind of reactive, changing the model to have relationship managers, and then focusing on business areas, and then aligning and looking at the system and innovation experimentation. And then Stuart talked about the importance of building the right team, needing to incorporate the system architect as that kind of change agent, that consultant, having greater cohesion with the team by having that architect there, and building the right foundation. He also talked about some of the challenges, communication, low customer satisfaction, not having KPIs, and talked about solutions to help around those. So, with that, I'd like to ask if anyone has a question. Yes, go ahead, please. Yes.
It might be across the panel, if you want to take this into account for each one. But all the things that you have kind of talked about, in today's sort of environment and where you've gotten to, and if you kind of fast forward yourself like 5 years from now, and how your business is changing and all of these that are happening, in the three areas, what do you see from your perspective and your background that needs to change from a leadership, from an employee, from staff, and customer? What would those three things be that would need to change, or what you know now, and what's coming in 5 to 10 years?
Well, I'll speak from the healthcare world. I think 5 years from now in the lab, specifically I believe in the live and breathe lab testing, it's more going towards molecular diagnostic and rapid testing versus traditional laboratory way of doing it. Going to close to where patients are, so at the customer, near the customer, happening more than siloed separately somewhere else. Technology, it's growing fast. Software, instrumentation, genetic testing, a lot of new developments are coming. So we we're gonna be faced with more information, more knowledge, bigger challenges, and working close to customers. That's what I see it more happening, at least in healthcare.
So that's actually like innovation, customer engagement, how fast the technology is rapidly changing, and how fast can you adapt to that change.
Right.
And what about leadership?
Well, leadership, I think you really have to continue to grow yourself and improve your knowledge. What's happened. You can't be behind in the office and just do the routine stuff. You have to adapt to new way of doing a leadership, new technology, adapting. I mean, a few years ago, how many leaders in the business knew about social media? If you just remain siloed and say that, oh, I have nothing to do with the social media, the business will fall behind. So those are the things, any new thing that comes up, you have to just tap on and learn and kind of grow with it. So that's what I think we need to do as leaders.
Thank you.
I think leadership needs to do a couple of things from an organizational standpoint. I think they need to, first of all, practice what they preach. So when you implement a solution, for example, any kind of a paperless philosophy, stop printing out your PowerPoint slides before you go to an office, before you go to a meeting. It makes a difference. People see that. If you're concerned about print costs, stop doing things like that and stop being part of the problem and become part of the solution that you just paid and invested in. I think also leadership needs to maybe step back from the magic wand approach of understanding on a high level certain things like Six Sigma or Lean or Agile, but just expecting that, using it as more than buzzwords, actually incorporating that into their vision and their leadership. I think customers need to. I think our customer challenges, no matter what industry, are probably going to be how they access information and how they submit information, how they communicate, and that is changing, obviously, daily with technology. And then internally, as any organization, from an employee standpoint, it's age-old, it's change management. I'm pretty sure the guy who first got on a tractor was pretty resistant, or his dad was pretty angry about giving up the horse. So it's human nature, and it's always going to be a problem.
I think there are also different generations are now working together, so leaders really have to help all different generations to work as a team, understand where each of the generations coming from, baby boomer, traditional Gen X, millennials. So I think that a leader's role is also to keep everyone. I mean, diversity is one thing, but different generation is another thing. So as a leader, you really have to look out for the latest challenges. That was one of our challenge, 4 different generations working in the lab, and we're trying to implement automation, and everybody has a difference of opinion, and it was a challenge. And so that was one of the things we did, kind of educate everyone as to why traditional people think the way that they think, and why millennials have to have a phone in their hand, or traditional say, why are you keeping your phone while you're working, kind of thing. So that's another thing that as leaders, we really have to look out for the latest trends and problems and issues.
And that's a critical point, because you also technology, right? How millennials basically look at technology versus the other generations, and how you're going to basically train and develop the talent. And now the complexity is, forget the diversity.
Yeah.
That creates another complexity.
Yes, absolutely.
Which is, I think, one of the areas where, specifically BPM, but any kind of automation really starts to contribute or benefit you as an organization. If you do not have to, if you give no choice but to fill out an electronic form or submit a task and then take some of the thought process out, it I don't know if I'm saying this right, it dumbs down the process a little bit. Training and turnover, which obviously we started seeing a lot with the baby boomers with turnover, that knowledge sharing becomes less. It's still obviously very important, but it becomes less of a barrier, I think, in moving businesses forward.
And that's key, is tribal knowledge. And you have a basically large group of labor force exiting out, and how do you capture that tribal knowledge? How do you capture best practice? You have bright individuals, millennium, but they may not know the best practice, or the history of why it was done a certain way.
Exactly.
Yeah, you mentioned innovation and seeing leaders actually adapt to changes a lot quicker. I see a lot of projects as an example where there's digitalization efforts in many companies, but folks are very slow in adapting, right? Because they know they have to do it, but it takes a long time. Well, there are a lot of things that has to be done. So just wait maybe 2 years. We have the projects. Keep justifying things whilst we know there's value in moving ahead, right? You just don't say the thing, but you have to walk the walk. And I like to see leadership understanding some of the. I remember it was maybe 2006, and I wanted to get into analytics, for instance. It took a long time to even convince my boss. Eventually, we got there, but today we are reaping a lot of value out of it. But it was a little too slow, and things are changing so fast. I like to see a lot of work in the data management in general. There's a lot of cybersecurity threats and different things that everybody knows what the issues are, but it's just a little slow. Some companies are doing it a lot quicker. Others, because you have to spend money, right? And sometimes you cannot just justify it right away. It's not very clear how much the value is. At some point, if it becomes an issue, it's going to hit you really hard, right? But you just have to be willing to start spending some money to be able to move a little closer. Mm-hmm. And for people development, I think things are changing so fast, right? The folks should be willing to retrain themselves and get with the program, what kind of attitude. And the bottom line is just be willing to spend a little bit more money to be ready for the challenges that are coming, and things are changing very fast. So
I would think from that perspective with the retraining and not to get into a philosophical discussion, but I think from a millennial or a standpoint of being Gen X, obviously the best generation, and being able to see both, the baby boomers and the millennials, it really, I think we need as organizations to adapt our style of discussing with them. In our generation and above, you kind of knew that I'm going to have to change or I'm out of a job. Like it was a continuous thing. Whereas, I don't want to say entitlement, but entitlement, we've raised a generation where we give them pretty much everything, and it's not so much about changing or earning, it's about receiving. So I think we need, as leaders, we need to maybe adjust how we think about that and how we communicate that.
Yeah, adapting, learning new skills. Automation brings new skills, that requires.
Exactly.
And being open to the change. We really need that to be successful.
Yeah, I think leadership needs to be more broadly aware of the landscape, because there are game changers out there, and in some ways they have to adopt a lean attitude or a lean concept towards it. Like, do little experiments, give things a try before you say, it's not going to make a difference, right? Even when it's scary, right? Like even when it's scary for employees or as an investment management shop, is there a fintech solution that will eventually, make traders redundant, right? Like, so that's pretty scary for the trader, right? And it would certainly change the business model, but that may be coming down the pike, right? So leaders have to really better understand the landscape that they're operating in and look for those disruptors, and not immediately, say, hey, that's never going to happen to us. They need to try small controlled experiments to see if there is a place for that in the industry and whether it is going to become, the next internet, right? And really invest where that is the case. And the employees have to be ready to change, right? So I don't know if any of you saw Hidden Figures, the movie, and one of the storylines was about a supervisor in the NASA team who, saw this IBM computer coming, right? And they were doing calculations very manually, and she said, I see this thing coming, and I know my team's going to be out of a job if I don't teach them how to, program this thing, right? So that's what employees need to do, is be willing to kind of take that leap of faith into a world that they don't really understand or know, if that's where the industry is going.
But to communicate that as a skill that leader needs to have, because when the employees, they are within the box, and leader, you have to kind of think outside the box, but as a leader, to communicate that to employees, that is sometimes challenging for them to see your vision, unless you show them, the end result and tactics. So I think that's important, that leaders and employees work together on that one.
Great question.
Yeah, great question. And great responses. Fantastic. Any other questions from the audience at this point? Come on.
I don't want to be the hall, but I have another question.
I'll throw it in and then.
So if I may ask this, a lot of you mentioned this, but I'd like to have your perspective. And this is the statement around nurturing talent, right? Hidden figure you mentioned, basically, how there's nurturing talent. How have you seen it in your backyard, or how do you nurture talent? Because a lot of times, it probably doesn't happen in anyone's company here, but of course I've experienced it, where sometimes we basically bring people from outside and we value their opinion more than the opinions of the staff. First, they need demoralizing. Second piece of it is, how do we basically make sure that also the employee needs to adapt, is that the talents and things they need to grow, because business is changing, and they don't want to be in the legacy group, they want to be in the leading technology and how to do that and learn all the new things. So the question is, how do you see of nurturing talent? What was the success factors if you've seen it?
Maybe I can give you some ideas. I can only speak about my department, my personal experience. We take a lot of effort in finding good interns. That's how we start, actually. We are thinking, we take a lot of time thinking about good projects that interns can work on. And this is basically, from my department, the kind of like entry step into our group. So we try to hire these interns after they graduate. I have a lot of like a small group, but young, really intelligent people that work with me, and then it's about giving them interesting projects that they can work on. And I think you don't necessarily need a company environment like Google or Facebook where you have great office space and parties, but I think it's a lot about the interesting work, a lot of freedom in the way how they approach the work, and I think that helps. In my department, the folks are normally staying between 4 and 5 years, which is a very long time in our company. So I'm assuming they enjoy the work that they do.
At our organization, within the lab, and then I'll talk about organization level. Within the lab, every time we have a new piece of equipment, we ask our staff who wants to be a specialist of this instrument. So they get to go to the vendor-provided training, they get extended training, extended troubleshooting. They become the resource person for implementation, validation, and successful go live of that instrument. We also offer leadership development type of courses. It's open to all of the employees. You know who's going. As a manager, they let you know these are the people who went to this leadership development courses. Our organization offers diversity, inclusion, variety of the courses, Excel, Microsoft, all Microsoft product courses, beginners, intermediate, and extended. You can tell who's interested in learning and growing. And then once a year, our organization offers a training for emerging leader. And that's when they get an input from managers and supervisors to kind of nominate their employee to learn more about it. So throughout the year, you probably spotted someone who is kind of eager and wanting to learn. We recommend them to go to the training, and the next opportunity comes available, then we give them a chance. That's how we do it.
Yeah, from my perspective, I look at it from a talent development perspective. I'm working with a lot of millennials these days. Just the last 2 weeks, I was interviewing some young people in an energy specialist role, and one of them was telling me, well, she expected that in 2 years she'd be promoted. Another 2 years, she had actually done exactly that, right? Every 2 years she moves to another role. And so what I was trying to tell her was that it's actually more about skills and talent development. So you grow your career versus looking for titles, right? It's not about the titles, but if you actually develop your skills, and it has to be done intentionally with the individual knowing where they want to go. But I think the leadership should provide that environment, the avenue, making sure people are getting skills. So sometimes you actually take a lateral job to actually develop skills in a particular area, knowing that it's actually going to help you move, because I tell people you can do 3 jobs that are all lateral, but then you could then move up 2 levels. But if you try and just look for, at some point you're going to, just be stuck somewhere. And if we do it that way, where we actually provide opportunities, specific jobs. I used to work for Imperial Oil, which is Exxon in Canada. And I like the way they did it, where everybody is assigned a mentor. And so your career is actually developed over time, right? They give you special projects, special challenges. And over time, you actually see, people develop. And you can go back 10 years, 15 years, and those people actually they are on track, to become senior leaders. And I think if it's done from that perspective, it's a lot better for the individual as well as the company.
Fantastic. Go ahead.
I think we, having previously insulted an entire generation, I will say that one of the, please keep that video rolling and post this part.
Yeah.
There was 2 generations.
Right, sorry. No.
Who's counting?
Right. Well,
Essentially the whole room.
Except for the Gen Xers.
totally on a roll then. The one thing I will say about the next generation is that they have grown up in an environment and in a culture that is in constant change, which is something that we and above did not have. We did not have that rapidity of change. And I think maybe we have been focusing a bit too much on qualifications from an educational standpoint and not qualifications from an experiential standpoint. And I think as we build our people up in our organizations, it really is more about offering them a breadth of experience, enabling critical thought and creativity, especially from a solution standpoint. You need to have creativity. You can't, otherwise you are because that's the way we've always done it, in 20 years. There was a session yesterday that I was moderating, and the gentleman, he was talking about a laser that does prostate surgery, and it's great. And he was talking about the attendant who would stand there and hand the laser to the surgeon. And that attendant essentially had seen about 4,000 or 5,000 more operations than the surgeon. And I think I would rather actually have the attendant perform that operation because he's seen everything that's gone wrong. He can actually advise, and really the only thing that the surgeon at this point has been contributing is a steady hand, I guess, which probably wasn't the case because lasers. But I think we need to really allow our employees to explore and gain experience.
Yeah, there's no substitute for experience. The problem with kind of experience is that if you're not ready for it, it comes with risk, right? So. I think the best way to nurture talent is to give opportunities that don't involve a lot of risk. So, you know, you could do things like put someone on a corporate project, right? That would put them in front of senior leaders on a project and potentially showcase what they have to offer and you know, develop them. And that would be a limited risk type of situation, right?
For both them and
yeah,
the company.
that's
Yeah,
right.
absolutely.
That's right.
Like a buffet.
That's why you have
A little
a
lunch.
technical
this?
mentor, right, will
Yeah.
help do that, so.
Yeah.
Okay, well, it is 3:30. Thank you so much for presenting and being part of our panel, and thanks for attending.
Thank you.
There's a